Good afternoon, everyone. This is Zaira Mirino Blas together with Jelly Creta and Lourdes Salahid. We are the Group 7 presenting Gagne'S condition of learning.
Robert Mills Gagne was born August 29, 1916 in North Andover, Massachusetts. He earned an AB degree from Yale in 1937 and a PhD from Brown University in 1940. He was an American educational psychologist best known for his conditions of learning. He pioneered the science of instruction during World War II when he worked with the Army Air Corps training pilots. He also involved in applying instructional theory to the design of computer-based learning. Robert Gagne died at the age of 85 on April 28, 2002. However, his contributions to the field of education will longer remain.
Let's talk about Gagne'S theory. What is Gagne'S theory? Gagne'S theory deals with all aspects of learning. It focuses on intellectual skills and it is utilizes to design instruction in all domains. There are three Gagne'S principles. First, different instruction is required for different learning outcomes. Second, learning hierarchies define what intellectual skills are to be learned and a sequence of instructions. And lastly, events of learning operate on the learner in ways that constitute the conditions of learning. So let's have first the first principle of Gagne, which is different instruction is required for different learning outcomes. This principle asserts that there are several different types of levels of learning. The theory implies that each different type of learning calls for different type of instructions. Distinct internal and external conditions are required for each type of learning. There are 5 categories of learning. These are first, verbal information, second, intellectual skills, third, cognitive strategies, fourth, motor skills, and fifth, attitudes. So the first category of learning is the verbal information. Example of learning outcomes in verbal information is stating previously learned materials such as facts, concepts, principles, and procedures. The condition of learning is first, draw attention to distinctive features by variation in print of speech. Next, present information so that it can be made into chunks. Then provide a meaningful context for effective encoding of information. Then lastly, provide cues for effective recall and generalization of information. Second category of learning is the intellectual skills. This category was consists of discriminations, concrete concepts, defined concepts, rules, and higher order rules. The example of learning outcomes and intellectual skills is first, the discrimination is distinguishing object, features, or symbols. Example of this is the even and odd numbers. Second, the concrete concepts, it's identifying classes of concrete objects, features, or events. Example, picking out all the red beds from a bowl of beds. Third, the rules, applying a single relationship to solve a class of problems. Example, computing average monthly of a company. Then fourth, order rules, applying a new combination of rules to solve a complex problem. Example, generating a balanced budget for a school organization. The conditions of learning in intellectual skills are call attention to distinctive features, stay within the limits of working memory, stimulate the recall of previously learned component skills, present verbal cues to the ordering or combination of component skills, schedule occasions for practice and spaced review, use a variety of contexts to promote transfer. So we'll now go on in the third category of learning, which is the cognitive strategies. The example of learning outcomes in cognitive strategies is employing personal ways to guide learning, thinking, acting, and feeling. Example of this is constructing concept-to-concept maps of topics being studied. The conditions of learning in cognitive strategies are describe or demonstrate the strategy, provide a variety of occasions for practice using the strategy, and provide informative feedback as to the creativity or originality of the strategy or outcome. The fourth category of learning is the motor skills. Example of learning outcomes in motor skills is executing performance involving the use of muscle. Example, doing the steps of the single dance. The condition of learning in motor skills is present verbal or other guidance to cue the executive subroutine. Arrange repeated practice. Furnish immediate feedback as to the accuracy of performance. Encourage the use of mental practice. Number 5. Attitudes. This is the last category of learning. The example of learning outcomes in attitudes is choosing personal actions based on internal states of understanding and feeling. Example, deciding avoid soft drinks and drinking at least 8 glasses of water every day. The conditions of learning: establish an expectancy of success associated with the desired attitude. Assure student identification with an admired human model. Arrange for communications, demonstration of choice or personal action. Give feedback for successful performance or allow observation of feedback in the human model.
Second principle of Gagné is learning hierarchy. Define what intellectual skills are to be learned and in sequence of instruction. Gagné suggests that learning tasks for intellectual skills can be organized in a hierarchy. According to complexity, stimulus recognition, response generation, procedure following, use of terminology, discriminations, concept formation, rule application, problem solving. The primary significance of hierarchy is to identify prerequisites that should be completed to facilitate learning at each level. Prerequisites are identified by doing a task analysis of a learning or a training task. Learning hierarchies provide a basis for the sequencing of instruction. The third principle is events of learning operate on the learner in ways that constitute the conditions of learning. These events should satisfy or provide necessary conditions for learning and serve as the basis for designing instruction and selecting appropriate media. The theory includes 9 instructional events and corresponding cognitive processes. In 1965, Robert Gagne proposed a series of events that are associated with and address the mental conditions of learning. These 9 events of construction can help build a framework to prepare and deliver instructional content. The 9 events of instruction can then be modified to fit both the content and students' level of knowledge. Gagne 9 events of instruction. Number 1 is gain attention, reception. By representing a stimulus to capture their attention, ensure the learners are ready to learn and participate in activities. Example for this is start the lesson with an interesting questions or thought, show an image, video, song, or newspaper article, and start the lesson with a game connected to the lesson. Number 2, informing learners of the objective, expectancy. Inform the students of the objectives or outcomes of the course and individual lessons to help them understand what they are expected to learn or do. Before instructions begins, provide objectives. Example is tell students what they will be learning. Number 3 is stimulating recall of prior learning, retrieval. Help students make sense of new information by relating it to something they already experienced. Example, ask questions about your students' previous experiences. Have students incorporate prior learning into current activities. What do they already know about the concept? Ask students what they already know about the topic. Number 4 is presenting the stimulus, selective perception. Organize and group content in meaningful ways and provide explanations after demonstrations. Use a variety of media to engage students in learning. Incorporate active learning strategies to keep students involved. So show information to students. Organize your information in a logical and easy to understand manner. Pwede po kamo use of multiple delivery methods, video demonstration, or podcast. Number 5 is providing learning guidance, semantic encoding. Help students learn how to learn by providing instructional support as needed. Show students how to learn about new concepts. Example, explain how the lesson will be differentiated. Use work examples to show what is expected. Verse 6. Elicit performance. Responding. Let the learners do something with a newly acquired behavior, skills, or knowledge. Provide them with practice activities to activate the learning process. This activity allows the learner to internalize the new informations or skills and knowledge and to ensure correct understanding and application of the concepts or knowledge. 7. Providing feedback. Reinforcement. After the learner attempts to demonstrate their knowledge, provide immediate feedback of learner's performance to assess and facilitate learning. This is also a good time to reinforce any important points. This stage helps reinforcement of a correct answer, gives guidance as the degree of correctness of the task, or provides corrective feedback if the response or behavior is incorrect. Give constructive feedback to individual or groups. Provide encouragements for students who may need it. Number 8 is assessing performance. Retrieval. In order to evaluate the effectiveness of the instructional events, administer a test to the learner to determine if the expected learning outcomes have been achieved. Performance should be based on previously stated objectives. Investigate whether students have understood the concept. You can also use oral questioning, short active learning activities, or quizzes. Lastly, number 9, enhancing retention and transfer. Generalization. Give the learner resources that enhance the retention and transfer of knowledge so that they are able to internalize the new knowledge and enhance his or her expertise. Repeated practice with effective feedback is the best way to ensure that people retain information and use it effectively. Study the 2 examples of teaching sequences below to reflect the events of instruction. Example 1 lesson, equilateral triangles. Objective for students to create equilateral triangles. Target group, grade 4 pupils. Number 1, gain attention. Show variety of computer-generated triangles. Number 2, identify objective. Pose question. What is an equilateral triangle? 3. Recall prior learning. Review definitions of triangles. 4. Present stimulus. Give definition of equilateral triangle. 5. Guide learning. Show example of how to create an equilateral triangle. 6. Elicit performance. Ask students to create 5 different examples. 7. Provide feedback. Check all examples as correct or incorrect. Number 8. Assess performance. Provide scores and remediation. And lastly, 9. Enhance retention, transfer. Show pictures of objects and ask students to identify equilaterals. So here is another example. Example 2 lesson, powerful lessons with PowerPoint. Objective, students to create presentations using Microsoft PowerPoint. Target group, this lesson is geared for educational students, pre-service teachers with basic computer skills. So in the first column, we have the event of instruction. The second column is lesson example, conditions of learning. And the third example is the rationale.
Look back on my guts and